Another Tuesday evening in Manhattan, and Thad Blackwood's Italian leather shoes clicked against the polished marble floors of Le Jardin, arguably the most exclusive restaurant in the Upper East Side. At 33, he'd grown accustomed to dining alone, finding a strange comfort in the solitude that came with success. The maitre d' recognized him immediately. After all, he'd been coming here every Tuesday for the past 3 years, ever since taking over as CEO of Blackwood Technologies. "Your usual table, Mr. Blackwood?" Marcel, the maitre d', gestured with practiced elegance toward the corner table overlooking Central Park. The late autumn sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, a view that would cost most people a month's salary to enjoy with their dinner. "Thank you, Marcel." Thad adjusted his custom-made charcoal suit jacket, a nervous habit he'd developed during board meetings. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation and the gentle clink of fine china, a symphony of wealth and refinement that usually helped him unwind after 14-hour workdays. A young sommelier approached with the wine list, but Thad waved it away. "The usual Bordeaux, Thomas." He'd learned the names of all the staff here, another habit his father had instilled in him before passing away and leaving him the company. "Success is built on relationships, son," he'd said. "Even the ones that seem insignificant." As Thomas retreated to fetch the wine, Thad's fingers absently traced the edge of his phone screen. 3 missed calls from his mother, probably another attempt to set him up with someone's daughter. She'd never quite forgiven him for letting Autumn slip away 9 years ago. The memory of Autumn Sterling still felt like a paper cut, small but sharp, stinging most when he least expected it. He was about to check his emails when something caught his eye, a familiar laugh that sent a jolt through his system. It was the kind of laugh that lived in his memories, the kind that used to wake him up on lazy Sunday mornings. His head turned involuntarily toward the sound, and the world seemed to stop spinning on its axis. There, being led to a table across the restaurant, was Autumn. Her copper hair was shorter now, falling just past her shoulders in elegant waves, but she still had that same graceful way of moving that had first caught his attention at their college graduation. She was wearing a deep green dress that made her eyes sparkle even from this distance. But it wasn't her presence alone that made his breath catch in his throat. Walking beside her, like a parade of mirrors, were 3 identical little girls. Each had Autumn's copper hair, and he could see as they got closer, his own steel gray eyes. They looked to be around 9 years old. The math wasn't hard to do. His hand gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. One of the girls was carrying a book, her eyes downcast as she walked, nearly bumping into a waiter. Another was looking around the restaurant with unbridled curiosity, taking in every detail like she was memorizing it for later. The third walked with perfect posture, her chin held high in a way that painfully reminded Thad of his own mother. He watched, frozen in place, as they were seated at a table just 2 sections away from his. Close enough that he could hear snippets of their conversation. Close enough that there was no way Autumn wouldn't eventually notice him. Thomas returned with the wine, but Thad barely registered his presence. His mind was racing through memories. The last time he'd seen Autumn, their final argument about his choice to take over the company instead of starting their own business together, the way she disappeared without a trace afterward. He tried to find her, but she'd changed her number, moved away, and her family had closed ranks. Now he knew why. One of the girls, the curious one, was already looking his way, her head tilted slightly as if trying to solve a puzzle. He could see his own expressions mirrored in her face, and it made his heart race. The weight of what he'd missed, what he'd never known about, threatened to crush him. Should he get up and leave? Should he confront her? Should he pretend he hadn't seen them? 9 years of business training, of making million-dollar decisions in seconds, and none of it had prepared him for this moment. Then Autumn looked up, and their eyes met across the restaurant. The color drained from her face, and the menu she was holding slipped from her fingers, clattering against the fine china. For what felt like an eternity, neither of them moved. The bustling restaurant seemed to fade away, leaving only the thundering of Thad's heartbeat in his ears. The curious daughter, he couldn't help but think of her as his daughter now, tugged at Autumn's sleeve and whispered something that made her snap back to reality. "Mom, why does that man look like the picture in your memory box?" The girl's voice carried just far enough for Thad to hear, and each word felt like another crack in the carefully constructed wall he'd built around his past. Autumn quickly gathered herself, years of composure training as a high school drama teacher evident in her recovery. "Skylar, honey, please focus on choosing your dinner." But her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the fallen menu, and Thad could see the rapid rise and fall of her chest, a tell she'd always had when nervous. The bookworm daughter peered over her novel. He could now see it was a wrinkle in time, and studied him with an intensity that reminded him of looking in a mirror. The third girl, the one with perfect posture, whispered something to her sisters that made them all giggle, though their mother's face remained tense. Thad's wine sat untouched, condensation beating on the glass like the sweat forming on his palms. 1,000 questions raced through his mind. Why hadn't she told him? How could she keep this from him? What were their names? Did they know anything about him? The weight of 9 years of lost bedtime stories and first days of school pressed down on his chest. His phone buzzed, another call from his mother. If she only knew she was a grandmother to triplets. The thought nearly made him laugh at the absurdity of it all. His mother, who'd been pestering him about grandchildren for years, had 3 she'd never met. Marcel approached Autumn's table with his usual flourish, and Thad could hear him greeting them. "Ah, Miss Sterling, welcome back. And the young ladies, Skylar, Phoenix, and River. How wonderful to see you all again. They were regulars here? How had he never run into them before?" The names echoed in his head: Skylar, Phoenix, River. He matched them to what he'd observed. Skylar must be the curious one, Phoenix the reader, and River the proper lady. They were beautiful names, exactly the kind of unique, meaningful choices he would have expected from Autumn. She'd always loved the way nature and humanity intertwined, always dreamed of names that told stories. "Mom," Phoenix's voice was softer than Skylar's but clear enough, "isn't that the man from your old business plan? The one in the coffee shop photo?" Autumn's face flushed, and Thad's mind flashed back to their shared dream, a chain of artistic coffee shops called Sterling Black, combining her creativity with his business sense. The plan they'd stayed up countless nights perfecting, the dream that had died when he'd chosen to take over his father's company instead. River, living up to her poised demeanor, straightened her silverware and spoke with carefully measured words. "Mother, I believe it would be impolite to stare. Though he does bear a striking resemblance to..." "Girls," Autumn cut in, her voice tight but gentle, "please? Let's just enjoy our celebration dinner." Celebration? Thad's mind raced. What were they celebrating? Had he missed their birthday? One of their achievements? How many other celebrations had he missed? He found himself standing before he'd made the conscious decision to do so. His legs felt wooden as he took the first step toward their table. He saw Autumn's eyes widen, her hand instinctively reaching out as if to protect her daughters, their daughters. Thomas appeared at his elbow. "Sir? Is everything all right with the wine?" Thad barely heard him. 9 years of board meetings had taught him how to move with purpose even when his world was spinning out of control. Each step toward their table felt like walking through deep water, but he kept moving. He had to know. He had to understand. The girls watched his approach with varying expressions, Skylar's open curiosity, Phoenix's shrewd assessment over the top of her book, and River's perfectly composed observation. 3 different versions of his own face looked back at him, mixed with Autumn's features in a way that made his heart ache. Autumn stood up just as he reached their table, placing herself slightly in front of the girls in an instinctively protective stance. Up close, he could see the years had been kind to her. She was even more beautiful than he remembered, with tiny laugh lines around her eyes that spoke of joy he hadn't been part of. "Thad," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but still carrying that musical quality that used to make him smile every morning. Now it made his chest tight with regret. "Autumn," he managed, his own voice sounding foreign to his ears. Then, unable to stop himself, he looked at each of the girls in turn. And Skylar, Phoenix, and River. The silence that followed was deafening. Skylar was the first to break the tension, leaning forward with her elbows on the table despite River's disapproving glance. "So you're him. The man from the coffee shop plants. Mom keeps them in her." "Skylar," Autumn warned, but her voice trembled slightly. The restaurant around them continued its elegant dance of waiters and quiet conversation, oblivious to the emotional earthquake happening at their table. "Please," Thad said, his voice rough with emotion, "may I sit?" He gestured to the empty chair at their table, his eyes never leaving Autumn's face. She hesitated, then gave a small nod, sinking back into her own seat. Phoenix carefully marked her place in her book and set it aside, her gray eyes, his eyes, studying him with an intensity that made his throat tight. "Mother says you're very good at business," she said matter-of-factly. "She uses your company's success as a case study in her economics class." Thad's eyebrows shot up as he looked at Autumn. "Economics class?" A faint blush colored her cheeks. "I teach business and drama at Wellington Prep now. The students, they respond well to real-world examples." River sat up even straighter if that was possible. Mother is the youngest department head they've ever had. She's quite accomplished. There was a protective pride in her voice that made Thad's heart twist. Someone had taught these girls to look out for their mother, to be her defenders. Someone who wasn't him. I'm not surprised, he said softly, remembering how Autumn had always been the smartest person in any room, even if she never acted like it. You always had a gift for teaching. For helping people see their potential. Like she did with you? Skylar asked innocently, but there was nothing innocent about the way Autumn's face paled at the question. Memories flooded back. Autumn staying up late helping him study for his business finals, her brilliant suggestions during his internship presentations, the way she'd always pushed him to think bigger, dream more boldly. Until he'd chosen the safe path instead of their shared dream. Yes, he answered honestly, looking directly at Autumn. Exactly like that. A waiter approached their table, hesitated at the obvious tension, then cleared his throat. Shall I add another setting, Miss Sterling? Before Autumn could respond, River spoke up with perfect social grace. Yes, please. We're celebrating our academic achievements today, and it seems appropriate to have all interested parties present. She emphasized the last words in a way that made Thad wonder just how much these girls knew about him. Academic achievements? He asked, seizing the opening. Phoenix nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. We each received special recognition. I won the regional science fair with my project on sustainable urban farming. I got the lead in the school play, Skylar added, practically bouncing in her seat. It's The Wizard of Oz. I'm playing Dorothy. And I, River said with dignified pride, was selected as the youngest student body president in the school's history. Thad felt like he'd been punched in the gut. They were so accomplished, so brilliant, so much like both him and Autumn in different ways. His eyes burned as he looked at Autumn. They're amazing, he whispered. They are, she agreed softly, then added with a hint of steel in her voice, they've had everything they needed. The unspoken words hung heavy in the air. They didn't need you. But looking at these three remarkable girls, his daughters, Thad wasn't so sure that was true anymore. The waiter returned with place settings, and as he arranged them, Thad noticed something that made his blood run cold. On Phoenix's book was a familiar leather bookmark, one he'd given Autumn years ago, engraved with their favorite quote, "Some infinities are bigger than other infinities." She kept it. All these years she kept it. And now their daughter was using it, probably without knowing its significance. How many other pieces of him had Autumn woven into their daughters' lives without them knowing? Mr. Blackwood, River said formally, pulling him from his thoughts, since you're joining our celebration dinner, perhaps you'd like to hear about our future plans as well? We've been quite strategic in our approach to middle school. Middle school. The words hit him like stones. His daughters were planning their futures and he was just meeting them for the first time. The weight of everything he'd missed pressed down on him, threatening to crush him completely. The waiter arrived with menus, creating a momentary buffer in the tension. Thad watched as each girl handled the menu differently, Phoenix methodically comparing options, Skylar flipping pages with excited energy, and River carefully examining the wine list despite being far too young to order from it. The cocoa vin is excellent here, Thad said automatically, then realized he was giving menu suggestions to his own daughters as if they were business associates. The absurdity of the situation threatened to overwhelm him. That's Mom's favorite, Skylar said brightly. She always orders it on special occasions. She paused, tilting her head. Did you know that? Is that why you order it too? Autumn's hand tightened on her water glass. Skylar, remember what we discussed about personal questions? But Mom, Skylar protested, you always say knowledge is power. And Mr. Blackwood seems to know a lot about you. Plus, he has the same gray eyes as us, and the same little crease between his eyebrows when he's thinking hard, just like River gets when she's working on her student council speeches. Phoenix looked up from her menu, her analytical mind clearly piecing things together. And he has the same habit of touching his left cuff when he's nervous, just like I do during science presentations. Girls, Autumn's voice was strained, please? No, Thad interrupted gently. They deserve answers. He looked at each girl in turn, then at Autumn. They deserve the truth. The truth? River's voice was careful, measured. About why your photo is in Mom's memory box. About why she keeps the old sterling black business plans in her desk drawer. About why she always gets quiet on Father's Day. Autumn went completely still, and Thad felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. He hadn't known about Father's Day. Hadn't known she still thought of him then. Or perhaps, River continued with that same careful precision, About why Mom took that teaching position at Wellington Prep 9 years ago, even though it was across the country from where you were building your company? The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Wellington Prep was in Seattle. That's why he'd never run into them here before. They must be in New York for a special occasion. The regional science fair, the school play, the student council position. These weren't just regular achievements. These were the reasons they'd returned to the city where it all began. You moved to Seattle, he said softly, looking at Autumn. That's why I could never find you. I had to, she whispered, and for the first time he saw tears in her eyes. You'd chosen your path. I had to choose mine. Without telling me about them? The words came out sharper than he'd intended, and he saw all three girls flinch slightly. You'd made it very clear that Blackwood Technologies was your priority, Autumn said, her voice tight. The night you told me you were taking over the company instead of starting Sterling Black with me, you said, and I quote, "Some dreams have to die so others can live." Remember? He did remember. He'd been so convinced he was doing the right thing, following in his father's footsteps, securing his future, their future, he'd thought at the time. He hadn't known their future was already growing inside her, 3 tiny lives that would inherit his gray eyes and her fierce spirit. 3 weeks after that night, Autumn continued, her voice barely audible, I found out I was pregnant. With triplets. I went to your office to tell you, but... Thad's stomach dropped. He knew exactly what she was going to say next. The memory of that day had haunted him for years, though for entirely different reasons than he'd thought. But I was in a board meeting, he finished for her, his voice hollow. And my assistant told you I was too busy to see anyone, even you. That I'd said not to be disturbed under any circumstances. Skylar gasped softly, while Phoenix's hand found her mother's under the table. River's perfect posture faltered for the first time as she looked between her parents. You never came back, Thad said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. That was the last time you tried to reach me. What would have been the point? Autumn asked, and now the tears were falling freely. You'd made your choice. Your father's company. Your legacy. I wasn't going to be the one to trap you in a life you hadn't chosen. The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle clink of fine china from nearby tables. Thad stared at his hands, spread flat against the pristine white tablecloth, trying to process the magnitude of what he'd lost through one simple command to his assistant. No interruptions. You thought you were protecting me, he said slowly, looking up at Autumn. By not telling me, you thought you were setting me free to pursue my ambitions. Weren't those ambitions worth more to you than anything else? The bitterness in her voice was tempered by old pain. The great Thaddeus Blackwood, following in his father's footsteps, building an empire? An empty empire, he replied, his voice cracking. Do you know what I did with Sterling Black? Our plans? All 4 of them looked at him with identical expressions of curiosity. Even River seemed to forget her perfect posture as she leaned forward slightly. I built it anyway. 3 years ago. Not as our coffee shop chain, but as a charitable foundation. It funds arts education and business training for underprivileged youth. Because every time I walked past a coffee shop, I remembered our dream. I remembered you. Autumn's hand flew to her mouth. The Sterling Black Foundation? That's yours. It's mine, he confirmed, then looked at the girls. And now I suppose it's theirs too. Along with everything else. Phoenix's analytical mind was clearly racing. The foundation that funded our school's new performing arts center? That's named after Mom? Named after both of us, Thad said softly. Sterling Black. I never stopped thinking about what we could have built together. Skylar, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. Mom cries every time she reads about the foundation in the paper. She keeps all the articles in her. Skylar, River cut in sharply, showing a protectiveness that made Thad's heart ache. These girls had grown up watching their mother carry this burden alone. No, it's okay, Autumn said, wiping her eyes with her napkin. They should know. I kept every article because I wanted you girls to know that your FA, that Mr. Blackwood was doing good things in the world. That he wasn't just about profit margins and corporate takeovers. But you never told him about us, Phoenix said, her voice carrying a hint of accusation. We could have known him. We could have been part of that good work. Would you have wanted that? Thad asked suddenly, looking at each girl in turn. To know me? To be part of my life? We already are, in a way, River replied diplomatically. Mother made sure we knew about Blackwood Technologies' environmental initiatives. We followed your company's charitable works. We even... She glanced at her sisters, who nodded encouragement. We even bought shares in the company with our allowance money last year. 1 share each. Thad felt like his heart might burst. Your shareholders? Very minor ones, Phoenix clarified. But we wanted to own a piece of, well, of your world. Even if you didn't know about us. I would have given you the world, Thad whispered, his voice rough with emotion. All of it. Everything I built, everything I am, it would have been yours. Should have been yours. And now? Skylar asked, her usual bubbling curiosity replaced with an almost desperate hope. Could it be ours now? Autumn reached for her daughter's hand, but Thad spoke first. It already is. Whether you want it or not, whether you're ready for it or not, everything I have is yours. My name, my company, my foundation, and my heart if you'll have it. Autumn's sharp intake of breath cut through the moment. Thad, you can't just. Can't just what? His voice was gentle but firm. Can't offer my daughters what's rightfully theirs? Can't try to make up for 9 years of lost time? It's not that simple, Autumn protested, but River interrupted with unexpected emotion in her usually controlled voice. Why isn't it? She asked, her perfect composure cracking slightly. Why can't it be that simple? We've spent our whole lives knowing half of who we are. Reading about our father in business magazines, watching his interviews on CNBC, pretending we're just interested in corporate success stories when really... She paused, collecting herself. When really we just wanted to know if we got our love of numbers from him or from you. Numbers are definitely from him, Autumn said softly, a ghost of a smile playing at her lips. I was always the creative one. But you're both in us, Phoenix observed, her analytical mind clearly working overtime. Like when Skylar performs, she has your dramatic flair, Mom, but Dad's strategic thinking in how she approaches each role. The word, Dad, hung in the air like a fragile soap bubble, and Thad felt his heart skip a beat hearing it for the first time. And when River leads student council meetings, Skylar added, warming to the topic, she uses Mom's teaching techniques but Dad's negotiation strategies. We've watched all your TED Talks, she added, looking at Thad with a slight blush. All of them? Thad asked, his voice rough with emotion. Multiple times, Phoenix confirmed. We've analyzed your public speaking patterns, your management philosophies, your approach to corporate responsibility. It's like we've been studying for a test we never thought we'd actually take. The waiter approached again, looking uncertain. Would you like to order? Yes, River said decisively, once again taking charge. I believe we all need a moment to look at the menus properly. And perhaps, she added with a pointed look at her mother, to consider new possibilities. As they all picked up their menus, Thad noticed how Autumn's hands were shaking slightly. He wanted to reach out, to steady them as he used to do before her theater performances in college, but he didn't have that right anymore. Or did he? Autumn, he said quietly while the girls debated appetizers, I know this is overwhelming. For all of us. But they're extraordinary. You did an amazing job raising them. And if you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve them. Trying to deserve you. We can't just erase 9 years, she whispered. No, he agreed. But maybe we can build something new. Something even better than Sterling Black could have been. Together. Before Autumn could respond, Skylar's voice cut in with characteristic enthusiasm. Mom, they have your favorite chocolate souffle for dessert. Remember how you said it reminded you of your first date with... She stopped abruptly, looking between her parents with widening eyes. Oh, with Dad. Here. At this restaurant. The memory hit them both simultaneously. Their first date at Le Jardin, barely able to afford it on their graduate student budgets, sharing that same souffle because they could only order one dessert between them. Had Autumn been coming here all these years, ordering the same dessert, keeping that memory alive? The look in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The waiter returned to take their orders, creating another brief respite from the emotional intensity. Thad couldn't help but notice how each girl ordered, Phoenix requesting detailed information about preparation methods, Skylar choosing with enthusiastic impulse, and River negotiating a subtle menu modification with diplomatic grace. Just like a board meeting, he murmured, earning a questioning look from Autumn. The analyst, the innovator, and the negotiator. They're like the perfect corporate team. They're not a corporate team, Autumn said sharply, then softened. They're just girls. Our girls. Who need to be allowed to be just girls. Thad nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. I think. I think I'm trying to find ways to relate to them through the only world I've known for the past 9 years. We don't mind, Phoenix spoke up, having clearly been listening. Actually, I've been wanting to ask about your recent pivot towards sustainable technology investments. The market analysis you published last quarter suggested. Phoenix, Autumn interrupted gently, maybe we could save the business discussion for when? River challenged, surprising everyone with her intensity. For another 9 years? Mother, we've spent our whole lives tiptoeing around this subject. Around him. Around who we are. Maybe it's time to stop pretending we're just 3 random gifted students at Wellington Prep. Skylar nodded vigorously. Yeah. Do you know how hard it is to pretend we don't notice when the business newspapers have Dad's picture on the cover? Or when other kids talk about the Sterling Black Foundation's latest project? Or when Grandmother Sterling tells us we have our father's business sense but refuses to say anything else about him? Phoenix added quietly. Thad's head snapped up. Margaret still talks about me? Only accidentally, River clarified. Usually after her second glass of wine at holiday dinners. She keeps a photo of you and Mom from college in her study, but she turns it face down whenever we visit. The mention of Margaret Sterling brought another wave of memories, her fierce support of his and Autumn's relationship in college, her devastation when they broke up. He'd always wondered if she'd known about the girls, if she'd been part of the decision to keep them from him. She never forgave me, he said softly, for choosing the company over her daughter. Over all of us, Autumn corrected, but there was less bite in her voice now. Though I suppose we didn't give you the chance to choose differently. Would you have? Skylar asked suddenly. Chosen differently? If you'd known about us? The question hung in the air like a suspended note in a symphony. Thad looked at each of their faces. These remarkable girls who carried his DNA but had been shaped by Autumn's love and guidance. He thought about the lonely years at the top of Blackwood Technologies, the hollow victory of each successful merger, the empty penthouse he returned to each night. In a heartbeat, he answered, his voice rough with conviction. Everything I've built, everything I've achieved, none of it means anything compared to what I missed with you. With all of you. Autumn's breath caught audibly, and he saw tears gathering in her eyes again. The girls exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Well, River said, straightening her silverware with deliberate precision, perhaps it's not too late to make a different choice now. The arrival of their appetizers provided a moment of normalcy in the surreal evening. Thad watched as Phoenix methodically photographed her dish for research, while Skylar immediately dove in with enthusiasm, and River waited for everyone else to start before taking her first precise bite. So, Thad ventured, you're all in Seattle now? At Wellington Prep. Not for long, Skylar said excitedly, then quickly covered her mouth when River shot her a warning look. Oops. Autumn sighed, setting down her fork. We were going to announce it tonight, actually. Before all this, I've been offered a position as head of creative arts and business education at Riverside Academy. Here in New York. Thad's heart skipped a beat. Riverside? That's 10 minutes from Blackwood Technologies headquarters. We know, Phoenix said meaningfully. We did extensive research on the school's location relative to various points of interest in the city. The girls were accepted into their gifted program, Autumn added softly. Full scholarships. We were planning to move here this summer before the new school year. Were? River caught the past tense immediately. Mother, surely this doesn't change those plans? If anything, Phoenix interjected, the proximity to both parents could provide enhanced opportunities for academic and personal growth. Skylar nodded enthusiastically. Plus, their drama department is amazing. And they have a business innovation club that works directly with real companies and... She trailed off, looking hopefully at Thad. And perhaps, he said carefully, they might be interested in working with the Sterling Black Foundation? Or even Blackwood Technologies' youth mentorship program. Thad, Autumn warned, but he could see the resolve weakening in her eyes. I'm not trying to buy their affection, he said quickly. But these programs exist. They're designed for exactly the kind of brilliant young minds I see at this table. Would it be fair to deny them opportunities just because their father happens to be involved? Their father, Autumn repeated softly, testing the words. It's still so strange to hear that out loud. Strange but true, River declared with her characteristic diplomacy. And as the student body president-elect at my current school, I can say with some authority that refusing to acknowledge truth rarely leads to productive outcomes. Phoenix set down her fork with scientific precision. I've been analyzing the variables involved in our potential relocation. The academic opportunities, the cultural advantages, the proximity to extended family, including newly discovered family. She glanced at Thad. The data strongly supports the move. And I already memorized my audition piece for the Riverside Drama Club. Skylar added. It's from that play you and Dad did in college, Mom? The Glass Menagerie. Autumn's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. You found our old playbill? In your memory box, all three girls said in unison, then laughed at their synchronization. That memory box has a lot to answer for, Thad said with a small smile, then turned serious. But maybe it's been keeping these memories safe until we were ready to face them. Until we were ready to make new ones. Mom keeps saying we shouldn't live in the past, River pointed out. That we should always look forward, plan for the future. The future, Thad repeated thoughtfully. You know, I've spent 9 years planning for a future I thought I wanted. Board meetings, acquisitions, expansions. But sitting here now, looking at all of you, I realize I've been planning for the wrong future all along. The main courses arrived, steaming and artfully plated, but no one seemed particularly focused on the food. Thad watched as Autumn unconsciously straightened Skylar's napkin. A mother's instinct he'd missed seeing develop. I have a confession to make, he said suddenly, causing all four of them to look up. The Tuesday night dinner reservation. It wasn't just habit. I kept it because. He paused, gathering courage. Because this was our night. Date night. Every Tuesday for 2 years in college. I guess I never really let it go. Just like Mom never let go of the coffee shop dream, Phoenix observed. She has 3 different business plans in her desk, each updated for current market conditions. Autumn blushed. You went through my desk? For research purposes, River clarified diplomatically. We were trying to understand everything. Everything we missed, Thad said softly. Everything I missed. First steps, first words. First business proposals, Skylar added with a grin. We tried to sell lemonade futures on the playground last year. Futures. Thad couldn't help but laugh. How did that work out? We cornered the market by pre-selling to the teachers, Phoenix explained. Then we reinvested the profits into a cookie venture, which River negotiated into the school cafeteria, Skylar added proudly. The profit margins were quite respectable, River said, sitting up straighter. Though Mother made us donate most of it to the school library. Autumn shook her head, but she was smiling. I should have known they got that entrepreneurial spirit from you. They've been running mini businesses since they were 6. 6. Thad's voice cracked slightly. What was your first venture? The girls exchanged glances before Phoenix answered. We sold friendship bracelets. But with a twist, we offered an insurance policy. If the friendship ended, they could return the bracelet for store credit. Store credit? Thad looked at Autumn in amazement. At 6 years old? They set up a whole return policy system, she confirmed, complete with a customer satisfaction survey. The data helped us improve our product line, Phoenix explained seriously. Thad felt tears threatening again. They were so much like him, yet so uniquely themselves. So shaped by Autumn's guidance, yet carrying his business instincts in their DNA. I want to know everything, he said suddenly, his voice intense. Every business venture, every school play, every science project. I want to know about their first day of school, their favorite books, their biggest dreams. I want. He looked at Autumn pleadingly. I want to be their father. Not just biologically but really their father. If you'll let me. We want that too, River said quietly, speaking for all 3 girls. We've achieved so much already, but... She glanced at her sisters, who nodded encouragement. But we've always felt like we were missing a vital board member in our life's corporation. That's a very businesslike way of putting it, Autumn said, but her voice was gentle. Well, we are Blackwoods, Skylar pointed out. Even if we've been using the Sterling name. The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Thad looked at Autumn, really looked at her, seeing both the girl he'd loved in college and the strong woman who'd raised their daughters alone. What if, he said slowly, we stopped letting fear of the past determine our future? What if we took all this love, all this potential, and built something new? Not Sterling Black coffee shops, but something bigger, a family. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. Autumn dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, composing herself before speaking. A family isn't built as easily as a business, Thad. It takes time, trust, patience. Like a long-term investment, Phoenix offered, earning a small smile from both parents. Exactly, Autumn agreed. And while I appreciate your enthusiasm, we need to think about what's best for the girls. We're right here, River reminded them gently. And we're old enough to have a say in this corporate merger. Thad couldn't help but chuckle at her choice of words. You're right. Maybe we should put it to a vote. Democratic process and all that. Oh, like a shareholder meeting? Skylar bounced in her seat. Since we're all shareholders now? Very minor shareholders, Phoenix reminded her sister, but she was smiling too. Well then, River said, straightening her posture even further if possible. As acting chairperson of this meeting, I move that we discuss the practical aspects of integrating Blackwood Technologies CEO into our family structure. Seconded, Phoenix added immediately, pulling out her phone. I've already started a pros and cons list. Wait, Autumn interrupted, but there was a hint of amusement in her voice now. This isn't something we can just put to a vote over dinner. Why not? Skylar asked. We've waited 9 years. Isn't that enough market research? Thad leaned forward, his voice soft but urgent. Autumn, look at them. They're brilliant, thoughtful, and clearly capable of understanding complex situations. They've been studying me from afar all this time, trying to know their father through news articles and annual reports. Don't they deserve the chance to know me for real? And don't you deserve to know them? She replied quietly. The real them, not just their achievements and business ventures. Their fears, their doubts, their morning bedhead and evening grumpiness. All of it, he said firmly. I want all of it. The good days and bad days. The successes and failures. The science fairs and the scraped knees. I have a scar from falling off my bike, Skylar offered helpfully. Want to see? Not at the dinner table, dear, Autumn said automatically, then caught herself falling into familiar patterns of parenting in front of Thad. The reality of what sharing these moments would mean seemed to hit her all at once. I have a proposal, River announced, pulling out a small notebook. A phased integration plan, if you will. Starting with weekly family dinners to establish baseline compatibility. Followed by scheduled activities aligned with our individual interests. Phoenix continued, catching on quickly. I have several scientific hypotheses I'd like to discuss with a fresh perspective. And I need help with my Dorothy monologue. Skylar added. Mom says you were an amazing wizard in college, Dad. The word, Dad, still sent a jolt through Thad's system, but this time it was accompanied by a surge of joy rather than pain. He looked at Autumn, trying to convey everything he was feeling through his eyes. They've clearly inherited your planning abilities, she said softly. And my determination. A dangerous combination, he agreed with a smile. One that's going to be impossible to resist. We know, all three girls said in unison, then dissolved into giggles. The dessert menus arrived and without discussion, they all knew what would be ordered. The chocolate souffle that held so many memories. As they waited for it to be prepared, the conversation took a more serious turn. There's something else you should know, Autumn said, her fingers tracing the stem of her water glass. Something I've never told anyone, not even the girls. All four of them leaned forward slightly, caught by the gravity in her voice. The day I found out I was pregnant, I didn't just try to tell you once. She looked directly at Thad. I came to your office 3 times that week. Each time your assistant said you were too busy. On the 3rd try, I saw you through the glass walls of your office, shaking hands with your father's board members. Thad felt the color drain from his face. The merger announcement week. When we were taking the company private. You looked so satisfied, so sure of your path, she continued. I watched you for 10 minutes standing there in the lobby, one hand on my stomach where our daughters were growing. You never looked up from your papers, never glanced toward the lobby where I was waiting. That's when I knew. Knew what? River asked softly, her usual composure slipping. That I couldn't be the one to derail his dreams. His father was sick, the company needed him, and a pregnancy, especially one this complicated. Autumn's voice cracked slightly. I thought I was being noble, giving you the freedom to become who you were meant to be. But you were both meant to be our parents, Phoenix said, her analytical tone giving way to emotion. According to my calculations, the probability of successful co-parenting would have been significantly higher with both parties involved from the beginning. Way to make it scientific, sis, Skylar said, but she was wiping tears from her eyes. Thad reached across the table, hesitated, then gently took Autumn's hand. She didn't pull away. "Do you know what I was looking at in those papers that day?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "Expansion plans for a coffee shop chain. I was trying to figure out how to buy and convert some struggling cafes, turn them into what we dreamed of with Sterling Black. I thought if I could make it successful enough, fast enough, you might forgive me for choosing the company first. I was going to surprise you with it." "Oh," Autumn breathed, understanding dawning in her eyes. "I've spent 9 years building someone else's dream, thinking I'd lost my own." His grip on her hand tightened slightly. "But my dream wasn't just about coffee shops and business plans. It was about building something with you. And now there's so much more to build," River finished for him, her voice thick with emotion. "Together," Phoenix added firmly. "As a family." Skylar concluded with her characteristic enthusiasm. The soufflé arrived, perfectly timed, steam rising from its dark surface just as it had 9 years ago when 2 college graduates shared their dreams over dessert. "I propose an amendment to the integration plan," River announced, sitting up straighter as she fought back tears. "Starting now. Not next week, not after a proper analysis period. Now." "Seconded," Phoenix said immediately, her own eyes suspiciously bright. "All in favor?" Skylar asked, raising her hand high. 4 more hands joined hers without hesitation. As they shared the soufflé, 5 spoons this time instead of 2, Marcel approached their table with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry, Miss Sterling, Mr. Blackwood, but we're nearing closing time." They all looked up in surprise. Somehow hours had passed like minutes. The restaurant was nearly empty, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows where sunset colors had been when they started. "Time flows differently when you're rewriting your future," River observed philosophically. "Speaking of writing," Phoenix added, pulling out her phone, "I've drafted a preliminary schedule for family activities, taking into account everyone's existing commitments and optimal bonding opportunities. And I've already told all my friends I'm getting a dad," Skylar announced, causing Autumn to nearly drop her spoon. "When did you?" "Group text sent 4 minutes ago," River explained. "Highly efficient if perhaps slightly premature." Thad laughed, a deep, genuine sound that made all 4 of them smile. "Well, I suppose that saves us the trouble of a formal announcement." "About that," Autumn said slowly, "what exactly are we announcing? This isn't just about you meeting the girls, Thad. This is about everything." He reached for her hand again, and this time she met him halfway. "Everything is exactly what I want. The company, the foundation, this family, they don't have to be separate dreams anymore. They can be one dream built together. With proper corporate oversight," River added seriously, making everyone laugh. "And regular board meetings," Phoenix suggested. "And family game nights," Skylar chimed in. "Every successful enterprise needs team-building activities." As they gathered their things to leave, Thad held back for a moment, watching his newfound family. The girls were already planning tomorrow's activities, their voices overlapping with enthusiasm. Autumn was watching them with a mixture of love and amazement, as if seeing them in a new light. "You know," he said softly, coming up beside her, "I always thought my father's greatest lesson was about business. Success is built on relationships, he used to say. But I got it wrong for so long." He wasn't talking about business relationships. He was talking about this, Autumn finished, gesturing to their daughters. "About family," Thad agreed. "The most important merger of all." As they walked out of Lujardin together, a family for the first time, the moral of their story was clear. Sometimes the biggest mistakes in life come from trying to protect others from our love rather than being brave enough to share it. Success isn't measured in dollars or achievements, but in the connections we forge and the love we're willing to fight for. It's never too late to correct our course, to choose love over fear, to turn missed opportunities into new beginnings. The greatest investments we can make aren't in stocks or companies, but in the hearts of those we love. Thank you all for watching this incredible story. If you enjoyed it and want to support the channel, you can now use YouTube's Super Thanks feature to show your appreciation. Every contribution helps us create more content like this. Don't forget to like, comment with your thoughts on this family's journey, and share this video with someone who needs to hear its message. Remember, it's never too late for love to find its way home. See you in the next video.